Hey everybody, it's Bust with Battles with Bust number 404, and today we're doing battle with the Scargrounds. And so, before we dive in, talking about Bruam and Vladimir, spoiler season is here. We want to pull up the new cards, talk about those just for a moment. It's a very exciting set for us as they have released the Noxus and the Demacian cards, easily the greatest factions in the game. And so, to take a quick peek at these, the Scrutinizing Sergeant strikes me as one that has a lot of powerful potential to it. This style of ability is something that has been exceptionally strong over the course of Magic, as to where you get to pick a unit from the top 5 cards of your deck. It has to be on the cheap end of things at 3 cost or less, but you get the summon on that unit. And so if you come out and hit a Vanguard Sergeant, you would get to put the 4 Demacia in your hand, or if you hit anything else that has a summon ability, that gets activated. And so just a big chance to hit a big value chain running off with this. The collective companies of the world will be very familiar with this style of card. It does carry the elite tag, so it gets those extra abilities as well. And then it does really help pop off with a lot of the Demacian based abilities and with things like Poppy. And so, again, the way we always describe Poppy, you would rather give 5 or 6 units the +1/+1 as opposed to just 1 or 2. Very simple mathematics there. And the Scrutinizing Sergeant really plays into that idea of getting the extra units on board for extra powers. And so we'll see how he plays out. The downside with a card like Scrutinizing Sergeant is there's a lot of very top-heavy stuff in Demacia, and it's just real crowded in terms of fitting cards in. And so in the 5 cost space, he's challenging up with Garen. He's challenging up with things like Screeching Dragon. And so there's just a lot of really good choices there. And then as you move up into the 6 cost space, you start to see Jarvan and Genevieve and Cythria, and even the capture a unit and have spell shield, whatever that guy is still called. Not Captain Indari, that's the improved Forge guy. But at any rate, it's not to say that this is a bad card. It's just that there's a lot of competition, and you can't really jam your deck full of 6 or 8 or 12 5 and 6 drops, and so he may not be able to find a place cost-wise. But very powerful effect nonetheless. Curious to see if this unit's able to pop off. And then, why not just move concurrent timelines into Demacia, right? That's... That's always the answer to these things, right? You play your Scrutinizing Sergeant, you convert it to a different 5 cost unit, you get a summon on something else, call it a day for your value package. Not bad whatsoever. Up next, we have the Mage Seeker Jr. This one's very interesting. I read the Color Pie article over on the main site, and they were talking about pushing more of the anti-spell measures into Demacia. And so as it stands, it's really just the Stony Suppressor and then the Petricite Pillar running around at the moment, but looks like that will be expanded out with the likes of units like Mage Seeker Jr. And it doesn't take a lot for this card to be pretty okay. Like, my initial kind of thought was like, this is just always worse than Stony Suppressor, right? If your opponent wants to play a Mystic Shot, they're getting the same deal. But if they want to play a card to remove the Junior, like an Aftershock, they don't have to pay anything extra. Get Excited doesn't have to pay anything extra. And so it really only comes in and cat. It really only comes in if you're hitting, say, like a lot of the Vandal City style cards. So if you're wanting to stop a Pastry Toss into Disintegrate, then those are going to cost a lot more mana. But at the end of the day, the thing that the Mage Seeker Jr. has going for it that that the Stony Suppressor doesn't is that its stats are good, right? The 3/3 for 3 baseline is pretty standard across the board. You can get into combat with pretty much anything on curve, and you feel like you're getting a good deal. As to where when you look at something like a Stony Suppressor, it takes a lot of work for it to be combat ready, and so. The downside for the Mage Seeker Jr. is it doesn't carry the elite tag, so it isn't just kind of like an auto slot into elites, which is only playing like 6 spells anyways. But if you're thinking in terms of Eternal, it does still work with things like Vanguard Bannerman and Poppy. And then in terms of standard, we'll have to kind of see if this thing is usable and ready there. But at the end of the day, it's very interesting to see these come in. I like having cards like Mage Seeker Jr. in the sense that you're not just playing like a direct counter card. Like, you're not like playing a sideboard card like the Stony Suppressor in your main deck. he's a real battler just on his own. Very interesting looking at the picture as well. It looks like those are Demacian Tellstones, which would be a terrible combo with with the Maid Seeker Junior, with the Jesus Junior running around flipping over the tax collectors' tables out here. But I don't really want to be playing Demacian Tellstones with the Maid Seeker Junior just to make my make make the Tellstones cost 3. Maybe that's the combo, though, right? You play the Junior and Lux and the Demacian Tellstones. You play the Tellstones for 3 and generate the Prismatic Barrier. Then you have your 6 cost of spell and a turn for Lux. The combos are coming forth. Good job, Junior. You're bringing it. But on to the next one, the last of the Demacian cards, the Crested Longhawk or Lionhawk. It's fine, in terms of just paying this price of 6 mana for a 5/5 tough that also generates a spell. It's not a terrible deal, but much in the same vein as the 5 cost guy that summons out the extra units. There's just like a lot of places to where this bird is competing in the lands of Demacia. And so at least the kind of benefit and the positive note for the Crested Lionhawk is this isn't a unit-centric ability. So if we took a peek at that summon unit, what are you called? The Scrutinizing Sergeant. The Scrutinizing Sergeant is very in tune with doing combat-based things, getting a bunch of units on the board, but the Crested Lionhawk is more control-based, more spell-based. And so if you are looking to play some kind of really slow game, maybe with like Lux or something, the Crested Lionhawk isn't really competing with the likes of Genevieve or with the likes of Cythria, and so it may find a place in that sense. Also curious if there's just a way that lets you say like manifest a like creature. What are these called? Manifest a ally with a different subtype or something, and then you can say generate the bird and then use that bird to generate another card. Interesting things if that's kind of there, but there's no decks in my mind at the immediate that are really kind of interested in the Lionhawk. And so, moving over to Noxus. Noxus is where the exciting things always live. Looking at Captain Kilrax, the very interesting and powerful ability. So a 5 cost 1/5, very terrible in the terms of stats. Comes with Overwhelm, but if he manages to do a Nexus strike, you get to deal damage equal to half of the enemy's Nexus health. And so, or hang on, deal damage to the enemy Nexus equal to half its health rounded up. I had to stop and give that a reread. I know that they had to rework Darius in terms of working. They were going to put out that like 30 or 40 health format, and they had to fix Darius so he wasn't as bad, needing your opponent to be at half of their health. I was curious if this was reading off of their initial health and just doming for 10, but it's the current health. And so with this, I'm not super impressed. Even if you want to say that this is going to work 100% of the time, by the time that you're hitting with these 5 cost and 5 cost units on around turn 5 or turn 6, it's not hitting for a ton, right? He might actually just be hitting for 6 or so instead of a real big number. And so I kind of suspect, unless there's some kind of weird combo involving this guy, that he's just not going to get the job done. He's not going to have enough stats to really be effective. Since you are going to need to upgrade its stats to try and get a Nexus strike in, I don't really see it working in Noxus. But there is always a lot of potential power with this. If you're going to be hitting your opponents for 10 plus damage off of a single unit, you do have to give it a little bit of thought and respect. I think he's just going to be a generated card, though, and not so much a main deck play. Up next, we have the Ravenborn Tome. 2 cost equipment gives you a +1 attack, but then when the bearer plays a skill, you get to copy it. That's, quite interesting. I'm not immediately seeing where this is going to be spectacular. You need pretty high-powered skills for this to really be popping off. And a lot of the really high-powered skills are all play abilities, right? And so if you want to get the stun off of a Solari Sunhawk or a stun off of a the ephemeral new guy, whatever he's called, you can't do it with this, since it needs to be when the dude in play is actually doing something. But it does work with things like, say, Mana Soul Student, getting you an extra point of damage every turn of the game. It does work with stuff like Annie. I believe I saw that it I'm thinking of something different. I was thinking in terms of transforms that have the skill abilities. That's slightly different, but it would count. The skill abilities count for Gen. So if you want to play a transform card in a Gen deck, you can do it if it has that skill ability attached to it. But I don't immediately think of anything that really like pops off with this. I'm wanting some kind of like really scaling kind of card. Like if Arena Battlecaster had a skill-based ability that gave all of your units +1 attack, and then the Ravenborn Tome gave a second iteration of that. That strikes me as being pretty nice. But as it is right now, it's not immediately coming to head, and this is the kind of card I would never play anyways, right? If you're wanting to put this in your Ravenbloom Conservatory deck that's just like 25 removal spells, just go ahead and get that nonsense out of here. And so maybe there'll be something, especially, I wonder if the next one that I was kind of immediately thinking of is the Reborn Reckoner, right? The one that lets you... He comes into play and generates the spell that lets you attack. If you are getting in the space to where you can attack multiple times in the same turn, the Ravenborn Tome does really kind of start to pop off. And so maybe that's the place to kind of start looking for this thing. Not so much just playing like a value package with Annie and Ravenbloom Conservatory. That all kind of sounds kind of stupid. But if you're having some kind of deck with like Katarina and... whatever that he's only an Eternal now, but he generates the spell that gives you a free attack, and then you free attack off your Ravenborn Tome unit. Maybe you're really brewing there and getting something to work. But just your standard kind of value play, don't think you're getting enough value for this to be too exciting. Although, I don't know, 6 damage Annie's maybe not that bad. All right, last but not least, the Noxan one to be excited about, the Bonehide Tri-Tail. And so base stat 3-2 Overwhelm for 4, not very good in that sense, but this does very quickly get up into the land of strong skills. And so only giving this a single +1/+1, not that good, but it's still playable, right? You don't really want your 4-cost cards only having 3 health unless they give you some kind of bonus along the way, because they just trade with too many 2-drops in the format. But getting this up to the big power point as a 5/4, time will tell is how challenging that is. If it's very easy to kind of curve out, I don't know, a turn 1 bird and a turn 2 reptile, and then as soon as the cat comes down on turn 4, it gets +2/+2. Being a 5/4 Overwhelm for 4 mana is the real deal. That's a very powerful unit to have to contend with. And so we'll just have to kind of see, right? We haven't seen the full extent of all of the subtype cards coming forward and the zoo format coming together, the zoo deck coming together. But this is the kind of card that strikes me as being, if there is a real subtype style of deck, this is going to be what really ties into it. And so you'll have some kind of Bandle City Mayor value generating kind of card, and then the Bonehide Tri-Tail is going to be the one doing all of the work, and then you'll just have a bunch of other crappy support cards that that enable the stuff, but they all build towards the Tri-Tail. And so, interesting dude. Curious to see how he goes. Love seeing these Overwhelm bros come out of Noxus, though. That's what we're always looking for, right? You got to have an Overwhelm, Elusive, or a Rally. And coming forth with 2 Overwhelms and a card that plays well with rallies is pretty interesting and exciting for me. And so, back into the main decks, back into the Scargrounds, the Bruam Vladimir, the community favorite. Always a lot of popularity around Bruam Vladimir, and that's who we're going to be battling with today. And so everyone loves seeing a good Scargrounds deck, but the thing that I've had in mind with Scargrounds over the course of the past season is playing this this improvised style package. I've run into a lot of spaces as to where we would have a Ruthless Raider on the board, we would have a Tough Equipment on the board, and then play a Bellows Breath. And then once you start to do that, you're like, oh wow, this is just kind of like having the Scargrounds on the board. This is like having a very big Scargrounds style play happen. And so that was what I was kind of having in mind with this deck, is looking to take advantage of the Forge package that's so strong in Freylord right now with the Weaponsmith's Apprentice, the Favored Artisan, and the Hearthblood Mender giving us Forges, then the Innovative Blacksmith and the Combat Cook giving us Improvises, and then the Bellows Breath kind of tying it all together. That's also a lot of things that play very nicely with the Scargrounds in the sense that the Bellows Breath comes in and does the damages to everything. We get to upgrade our unit, and then everyone gets the bonus stats from the Stargrounds while we're at it. The kind of traditional problem that this deck has had is actually closing out the game, though. And so you have units like Bruam that just don't do any damage. You have Vladimir, who does the AoE thing, but he doesn't really do damage in combat on his own. He only has Fearsome. And that's where the likes of the Great Hammers are going to come in. And so the idea for the day is that over the course of these games, we are going to be able to spread out overwhelms to our big units with the Great Hammers, or if we generate Official Whack, we can give Vladimir a big bonus that place as well. But there are a lot of like little combos in here that I get pretty excited about. Even things like Favored Artisan generating a Time and Dedication, putting the Time and Dedication onto Bruam so that he can be a relevant damage dealing attacker is kind of interesting. And there's just lots of really resilient units in here that play nicely with the weapons, and then with the Bellows Breath and Vladimir providing the AoEs to activate the Scargrounds. It seems like there should be a nice cycle of synergies happening between all of these cards that make me want to come in and give this a go. And so that's the deck. That's what we're doing battle with today. Let's go ahead, jump on in. Alright, so where we at? The Scargrounds coming in, taking us all the way to Masters, I'm sure. Let's jump on in with these guys. It's an interesting deck. It plays quite well against decks that just don't have a ton of removal in it. And so going up against something like Norra Swain, it's not going to be super ideal. It's going to depend a lot on the amount of cards that they play, like a like Scorched Earth style of cards. And so we'll just have to wait and see exactly how this deck turns out. But you typically don't want to be playing against these Noxus-based control decks. You want to, you want to be more in line with unit-based, combat-based strategies. But the thing that is kind of nice with this, as compared to the more traditional style big unit Bruam decks, if you will, is that these equipment are reusable, right? And so if we make a +3/+3 equipment, put it on a unit and it dies, and we put that +3/+3 equipment onto Bruam, he's much more resilient in the face of these style strategies, as opposed to in the past, where if you were playing spells and then trying to heal up after the fact. So I like a lot of these forges in this space. Alright, the bomb has been dropped. As far as this turn goes, I wasn't going to be attacking with our Overwhelm unit. We're building up to this Bellows Breath, and we should be able to AoE away the opposing board. So I didn't want to just run him out when he's going to be survivable and a little bit more usable a couple of turns from now. And so we went with the Fearsome on the Innovative Blacksmith. Now we're going to look to get the Combat Cook on board. Next turn, we'll see how much we can clear out with the Bellows Breath. So no Scargrounds on the board for the big plays, but can ideally clear a lot of these units. The Pterodactyl coming on board, though. He's a little on the scarier end of things. But let's drop the Forge onto our Overwhelm equipment, try and clear out these smaller units. I was hoping that he would portal a small unit onto the board so we would be able to clear it away as well, but didn't quite happen. Looks like we're about to eat a Disintegrate. If you're not familiar with how this play would work, if he was going to Disintegrate Pokestick our Combat Cook, it would get the kill onto the unit. The equipment would come back into hand, so we wouldn't get any Forges, but the AoE is still going to happen, and so Norra will die, the Junk Construct will die, our Apprentice will die, but we just don't get the Forge onto our Overwhelm. Okay. Seems like opponent figured out what was about to happen, and then do we want to be making attacks this turn? Like, I'm not completely opposed to it in the sense that you know, getting this pterodactyl off the board would be nice, but the problem that we kind of have there is we don't have any more units in hand to equip our stuff to. So I was going to let our units survive and then come in a little bit later with this Scorched Earth to take down the pterodactyl. And then the snail moth coming in. We didn't talk too much about the snail moth. He's a very resilient unit in the sense that he works quite nicely with the Jesus Christ, what a fucking hit. He works quite nicely with, you know, loading up these rando equipment that we get along the way, putting a sandstorm amulet onto the snail moth and then letting him hit that regenerates nice, but at the end of the day he's just a big overwhelm unit, and that's what our deck needs in large part. Nice seeing Bruam flipped, or Vladimir flipped, but he's not super powerful on this board. I think we're going to be stuck playing him anyways. We have to clear out this Gringlade duo. I don't feel very comfortable going into the next turn with opponent randoming into Mana Soul Student and then also having this this unit on board, and so we're just going to be stuck trying to get it clear. So we'll drop the Bellows Breath onto Vladimir, try and forge up the big vampire bro all on his own.
That's so cool.
This is fine. We got rid of the duo. That's what we needed. Probably still just dead at this point. Right? I mean, we didn't get to clear his unit, and he still has 7 mana. But yeah. Okay, GG. At very low expectations for that game. Again, we're just, as we're out here playing this curve strategy and trying to play cards like the Scargrounds, going up against Disintegrate decks is going to be a problem. Alright, next battle though, what have we got here? Trundle Lissandra out of Ionia. I suspect this will be another kind of like Trundle set style deck with Field of Rushes and ramp and stuff. Curious, I mean, it's a little odd seeing Lissandra in here. I'm curious what the usage is. If she's just a cheap unit to be defensive, or if we're actually going to run into the landmarks.
Picked me. That's why Smith.
But kind of a turd of a start. not too much going on here in the early game. Hopefully we don't get stuck going into turn 4 without another play. No draw there. Just kind of disaster mode against a deck like this, as you expect them to be really building up to playing in the late game, right? Here comes ramp spells coming at us. Just not dropping any aggression plays exactly into what they're wanting to have happen. Of course, the blacksmith turns up a turn late. It's the way things go, you know. So let's get Bruam on board. He should be safe in this spot. And I think we'll add in Vladimir. Not really pumped about it. We did just pick up the Scargrounds along with having access to Bellows Breath. No, we mulliganed away our Bellows Breath. Let's just get Vladimir in.
Hello, my darling.
Just as we're playing against this deck, it's going to be loaded with stuff like Concussive Palm, and we're just gonna struggle in terms of you know, if he's able to Concussive Palm Vladimir. We only deal 1 damage this turn. We do get the unit out of Bruam, but it's not particularly exciting. Alright, more ramp stuff. Gonna be up to 8 mana on the round. Gotta start worrying about stuff like Buried in Ice now.
You're in Trolllands now. Hail to the king!
Vladimir eats the pillar. Sure. We gotta just keep playing stuff though. I mean, I'm just gonna say at this point, if he has the Buried in Ice for the turn, then he has it. I'm going to look to just add in the Apprentice. We'll add in the Innovative Blacksmith. We have a Transfusion for the round that can get us in a spot to... Nope, you're just going to die, aren't you, Vladimir? I think we still want a Transfusion. Try and get this Trundle off the board. I don't want to get super invested in this. He's going to have things like harsh winds to ruin our day, but go get it. Take damage from this thing? Puts it exactly in his place. Okay. Rip Vladimir. Ice Pillar's gonna be coming from everywhere.
Ever been to a blacksmith before?
Alright, got our big unit on board. I mean, maybe we don't have to worry about some of this stuff. I know Trundle's gonna be coming right back in. Has to just be playing stuff like the Old Timer or something, right? And he's trying to take advantage of these ice pillars.
Cold and gossip's hot.
I don't know. I don't know how Disaster's gonna strike, but I can tell that it's close. It's nearby. It's nearby. There we go. Okay. That was fun. On to the next one.
Next time, we will do better.
You can't. Your expectations can't be too high in that one when your opponent's playing up to the big spell and you just don't play any cards on the second or the third turn. Just absolute disaster in what's already a bad matchup. What do we got next? Norra Veigar. All right. We can tango a little bit with Norra Veigar. It's at least not as terrible as these other matches have been. Probably still a little bit unfavored, but well, we'll see what we can do. If you're going to be real, when you're playing the Scar Grounds, you're going to be a little unfavored against pretty much every deck in the world. So your expectations can't be too high.
Kindle picked me. That's
Let's
why
see what
I
happens
Smith.
if the Apprentice... I'm curious if we'd rather the Apprentice just eat a Quietus, or if we're happier with the hammers coming in.
It's nice.
Definitely dropping the hammers in. Very, very powerful Overwhelm equipment to roll through with.
To work.
Okay. Let's see how this goes. This is a reasonable enough curve. We're kind of all in on the Weaponsmith's Apprentice, but we are in a space to where we'll just full bank this turn. On next turn, you know, maybe opponent will hit a small portal and we can clear their board with the Bellows Breath, and then maybe the Hearth and Blood Mender will get the chance to heal up our Apprentice. I don't suspect the Apprentice is going to be long for this world, but we might have a shot to make that big play. Nope. Alright. Can we just go for it? I'm kind of on board with it. Like, opponent has a removal spell here like 100% of the time. I felt like on the last turn they were just kind of just playing it slow. Let's not get overly ambitious here. Maybe we'll add the unit to the board so we can protect our Apprentice with the transfusion. Because I'm pretty certain there was a pokey stick or something getting ready to come in and he just passed the turn anyways. And so with this in mind, with this in mind, we might be able to continue on with this plan just a little bit slower. And so I want to keep the Apprentice on board. It has the good equipment. We want to hit it with the Mender next turn, and then see if we can't get some of these big boys online. It's about to be big with the Overwhelms in the sense if we drop the Mender and then get a great Hammers on it or something. Lots of opportunity for Overwhelm coming in. Alright though, Veigar on board. No way to interact with him because who needs that? We did just pick up Bruam if we want to try and crash in, but I don't think it's a real necessity. I do kind of like being able to take the unit off of the board though, right? I don't think we're going to get a lot of value out of this quick attack from the Blacksmith. And just kind of punch in completely with the Overwhelms here.
By the forge we create, and we mend.
Load up the Apprentice with the Forges. We're going to drop the Great Hammers on the Mender. Next turn, we can bring in the Snail Moth. Look to potentially have all these big Overwhelm Bros going. I could see an argument for saving the mana from the Mender's Great Hammers to put the quick attack onto the Snail Moth, let it get that regenerate and be a little bit protected, but doesn't strike me as being quite necessary. Like he can block it with the Junk Construct and then Darkness, I guess. That's, you know, kind of appealing from the opponent's perspective, but I think we have to get this damage in now.
And the dead.
More air, more combs.
That's pretty good having the Ixtali come in.
Steady as life and death. It wants us.
Still got some Overwhelms. Most certainly see a Darkness come in onto the Snail Moth. See if we can't just get a little bit ahead of this. Just need a little. Vladimir's ready to do the work. He says, I got fearsome so Veigar can't block me. he says, let me do it. Let me get busy this one time.
Drop something.
Uh-oh. Are we losing Vlad? Fuck. That's a bummer. So how do we move forward from here? He currently doesn't have any Darknesses. We could Bellows Breath. Get rid of the Bomber Twins. It makes our Overwhelms better next turn, and then we have the damage onto Veigar, so if we need to Scorched Earth him, we can do it. Kinda like it. I don't think adding Bruam actually does anything this turn. Alright, Overwhelm crew. We need you to do it. We need you to put in the work.
Really?
So how slow can we play this? Like, the Snail Moth is kind of interesting. The card that worries me about playing Snail Moth is if opponent has Senna, right? If we're in a spot to where we play the Snail Moth and then they just play like literally any unit that isn't Senna, then we're in a pretty positive space since he's not going to be able to shut any of this stuff down. But if he's able to play Senna and then fast speed Darknesses at our units, then we're going to be stuck. But I mean, attacking for 14 and opponent blocking with this, and then even having, you know, pretty much any removal spell in the game, just kind of puts us in a spot to where I feel like if we don't win the game this turn, we're probably not winning this game. And,
Hammer, tongs, and
we need to just try and get it in. So he has the Ixtali. I think that's okay.
Go away. My spirit is stone. What are you made of?
2 damage short at the moment.
My spirit is stone.
Let's get that extra 2 points of damage in. Take the Veigar off of the board. Gotta worry about him flipping and then chunking the Darknesses at our face. And so we're gonna lose out on some units here. That's most certainly happening, but at least we're not dead, right? that's a key factor in any game. Just don't be dead. Now we're ready to send our +7, +5, soon to be +8, +6 Weaponsmith's Apprentice right into battle.
Give me your malice
And
creatures
Vladimir
too.
turns up. Well, Vladimir's gonna be better than Bruam. We can still double equip after playing him.
My glory. Hello, my darling. My mind's a wonder.
Did we just take this? I'm tempted to just kind of be all in and say, well, if you need the vengeance or you lose, right? I think we can take this damage. He shouldn't have any ways to deal damage to our face directly here. I think we'll just let that happen, and then I'm just going to load up the giant hammers onto Vladimir. I think we're still safe to put the small one down first onto the Weaponsmith's Apprentice. If he wants to block the Apprentice, that's okay. No, we're just dead now, aren't we? We weren't gonna beat the Veigar anyways. Maybe he'll do something dumb, right? Get that big Vladimir on board. Maybe he'll send it at a unit, right? But no, this is one of these spots, assuming we weren't just dead to a card like Veigar. The removal spells in this deck, it tends to sometimes not even play Vengeance and play things like Minimorph. And so I think it was okay just to be like, all right, well, let's load up on the damage and make him have the Vengeance next turn. All right, well. One of these games, we will get a Scargrounds on the board. We'll do something interesting with it. God, this thing again. I don't even want to play it. This is just like the least interesting match 2023. Let's just go ahead and move on. All right, next battle. It's so boring. Like, I see the appeal in playing the big spells, but there's just literally nothing interesting that's going to come out of that match. So who's up next? Who's going to send us back up to Plat 1? Trying our hardest with the old with the old Scargrounds. I guess you can't say you're trying your hardest when you just concede to the Trundle deck, but we'll see. We'll see. What's going on, Riot? There we go. All right. Opponent failed to connect. We'll count that one as a win. We'll count that one. Marked it. All right, next battle. That would have been a timeline stack. Might have been interesting. Might have been interesting. All right, up against Akshan, Nasus. Let's see what we can do here. We don't have a really good kit in terms of dealing with Nasus. It's almost tempting to hang on to a card like Scorched Earth, since it is our only way to deal with him, but it's just a little bit too early.
Kindle, did you wander off again?
Alright, so we'll get our apprentice in. The thing we're going to do with this match is we don't want to be getting our units slayed, right? And so in a lot of matchups to where you'll come in and just offer up a trade, and this one we don't really want to do it as frequently. Now, I'm interested if he's going to actually block with action, right? This does give him a slay. Very surprised to see that one actually go through. I think that would mean that he just has a second action in hand. But it's not the end of the world. But I'm trying to say you don't want to come out and just be giving them the slays, giving them the trades that let them then come in and level up on their Nasus. I'm going to go ahead and boost the Artisan. It's going to let us deal with the Jagged Butcher. I'm going to go ahead and just take the Escaped Abomination damage. It's not that big at the moment. And again, we're gonna prevent those slays. Now we can bring in Combat Cook. Really want Quick Attack. Didn't turn up. Let's go with the Pot of Pain. It'll give us the 5/6.
Come and get it!
And a Hate Spike. Sure. Got to get in an attack at some point, though, right? you can't just sit around forever.
the work.
Alright, so how do we want to handle this one? I'm leaning towards the blacksmith and the pot of pain. Let's go ahead and drop the pot of pain in. Make sure the artisan doesn't die to just random stuff. Now we can bring in the blacksmith. And a pain's kind of serviceable here. Let's just get the forge blade. The downside with Pan of Pains, it doesn't interact well with this escaped abomination.
I've dressed for the occasion.
Let's get the big dog in here. We got a decent attack this turn. If Vladimir gets to stick, I was like, I'm pretty okay with just attacking with everybody and letting it land behind. Now I think we have to just start doing something. He's only got one unit on the board, and we don't really want to be making trades. We want to be just winning these combats, but our hand doesn't really let us play towards that. So. We're gonna have to Bellows Breath, Scorched Earth this Nasus before he's able to get a strike in. We will fortunately have 8 mana next turn, so we can pull that off if we need to. Alright, there's the big dog. Breathe deep, my friend. Breathe deep. Alright, something slightly goes our way. I forgot how it felt. I forgot how it felt. What do we got now? A Hearthblood Mender? I mean, I want to... Like, we need to get the Great Hammers going. Our Pan of Pain is pretty strong at this point, a +4/+2, but I'm wanting to play the hammers onto the blacksmith and then Hearthblood Mend the hammers so that we actually have a strong overwhelm. Maybe it's just too far gone at this point, but I mean, if he is able to come in and play like a, I don't know, even just a, like, Prey. Any of the 0/1s coming on the board just completely shutting down all of our attacks, that sounds pretty miserable, and so I think we're going to be counting on this this overwhelm to try and get something going. And of course a Nasus. Sure. Okay. Oof. Rough beats, rough day for the Scargrounds. On to the next one. We should be able to get these 2 more games in. But this has been tough. This has been tough. What do we got now? Is this a potential winner up against the Maokai Demacia? I'm not entirely certain what that's supposed to entail, but this is at least a decent start in terms of units. Let's get rid of 1 blacksmith. We have to actually physically play a Scargrounds before before the video's over, right? Jeez. Keep looking for it. I keep eyeballing these draws, hoping it comes in.
Hold while I smith.
Good job, favorite artisan. I really like having these 2/3s in the factions I like to play these days. It's been brutal in this era of all the units kind of shrinking in stature. What do we got here? I'm leaning towards this Sandsworn Amulet. Like, I'm just kind of envisioning opponent having a bunch of garbagey ephemeral units. Like, I still don't know entirely what they're doing, but this strikes me as seeing stuff like Opulent Foyer and that thing that Hecarim does to summon units. Like, this seems like it's probably a Maokai and Grand Plaza and ephemeral summony kind of deck. And I think the Fearsome's going to take us further along than the Quick Attack would. Wanted Overwhelm out of this. It didn't turn up, but in kind of the same vein, we can pick up the point of damage off the impact. We should have attacked with this Artisan. Probably just going to be forging next turn, bellowing the breaths, you know. We can give it a bit of time, though. I mean, we do have this nice space of adding in a Ruthless Raider, putting in equipment on it, and then boosting the equipment with the Bellows Breath. I guess the question will come down to is, do we want to add the Snail Moth next turn? Not at the moment. I don't know what the plan is for these Vanguards, but it's not going to happen easily. not gonna let that nonsense just roll through. And the Scargrounds turns up. We're gonna play it here. We did it. We did it. We got the Scargrounds on the board. Achievement unlocked.
Kindle, did you wander off again?
The requisite action for the video has been done. We activated the Scargrounds. It's on the board. It's ready to go. What more can you ask for?
Come and get it!
Yeah, activated. Tough now. Now we're tough. Now we're talking. We did it. We did it. Good job, team. Doesn't matter how poorly the remainder of these games go.
Better get the forge going.
Ready to cruise and bruise with this Snail Moth as well.
It's nice. Could be nicer.
Look at that. Regenerate. Got it. Now a combat cook. All right, we cruising. So I'm not going to play around something like the Ruination. You know, if he's got it, hopefully we can recover with our equipment. But I think this is our chance to just come out and get our width. Snapvine is on the scarier end of things. Probably just have to stop here.
Hot's a boiling!
He plays something like a Haunted Relic. It's going to be a little problematic, but if we get 2 turns to get the chip damage in, it might be okay. We've got a great hammer as we have the Snail Moth doing his Overwhelm thing.
Perseverance will lead
Can
to triumph.
maybe do something. Oh, combos. Oh, not a combo. not a combo. Now we get a Mender. Okay, so let's drop in the Great Hammers. Curious to see if he just attacks right now, or if we're gonna be mending up the Apprentice. Either way, I'm pretty okay with it. Falling to 10's not a very big deal. We should probably just go ahead and block with the Combat Cook, right? He's never going to deal damage next turn. It's got to be all Overwhelms, and it has to be maybe the point of damage from the Pot of Pain. But just attacking with a 5/3 quick attack and Combat Cook's not doing anything next turn.
No dessert? No.
The winter's claw strikes.
Atrocity. At least that wasn't at our nugget, right?
His fire burns bright in our hearts.
Alright, it's like we just need one of these units to connect. Maybe we can do it. Whew. We got a game. We got the Scargrounds on the board. What more can you ask for? What more? Phew. Get me into this final battle and get me out of here. This has been painful. This has been painful. Alright, up against tokens. You know what? This is actually a place to where the Scargrounds can really shine. If we're able to come down and get the Scargrounds down and then get the tough on our units and just start blocking the little guys over and over and over again, definitely something there. So as far as this starter goes, there is, you know, a touch of desire in hanging onto a card like Scorched Earth that lets us blow up Azir's Diaz, and it lets us maybe take down an Azir if he's coming at us with a lot of stats, but it's a very greedy keep. It's not like we can beat an Emperor's Diaz if we need to.
The Winter's Claw strikes.
So let's go ahead and get our Overwhelm unit on board. May get to attack this turn, may not. The Emperor's Diaz does let us get the attack in. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Continue on. We're gonna be hammering. We're gonna be hammering hard. I think we want to save it next turn for Bruam. It's a pretty high risk play. Going for it like that, right? If we want to add Bruam and then add the Great Hammers, but you know, if we want our deck to pop off, we gotta we gotta show off the combos, right? So let's just go for it. You know? Ooh, the Scargrounds. Next turn, Scargrounds. We're gonna go beast mode. Just get to showcase all the combos. We just had to wait until the last game to do it. That Bruam. He's not getting Defiant Dance just yet. Too bad he can't take down this Azir. We could look to, like, I know we have the Bellows Breath combo in hand, but if I think how this next turn is going to sequence to where it probably involves opponent playing a unit, and then we get to basically just full clear their board with the Bellows Breath, that's just like way too good to pass up, and so we'll see. If he open attacks here, I feel like that's probably a win for us. We'll get to do the sweet Bellows Breath Scargrounds combo a turn from now, but I think this is gonna go ham. Leaning towards just putting it on the Overwhelm unit, but we should probably hit Bruam. Get that board. Dead unit, dead unit, dead unit, dead unit. That's what you like to see. Breathe deep, Ornn. Breathe deep on him. Did he give up?
Do they need our help?
Did he go away? Did he say this is too much? Too much breathing? Too much breaths? No. Alright, fine. He protects his Gringlade duo. Makes sense. It's a very challenging unit for us to deal with. Counting on old Bruam to do the work, get in front of the duo. Maybe get that nice challenge in next turn.
They'll never see us coming.
You are safe with Bruam.
Curious if we actually need to block with this Mighty Poro. Like, he's pretty far behind at this point. Like, we're not going to lethal next turn. We're pretty far away in terms of Overwhelm. Right, we've got 12 on board, 18 with the Snail Moth, so it's not impossible to get a kill next turn. It's just not very likely. So let's take this a little bit slower. Different Overwhelm. We'll get the Scargrounds on the board. There's the Defiant Dance. A little slow with the Scargrounds. We're not going to be able to give anybody tough out here. Ew. He's down to one card. Well, nothing about that went how I wanted. Trade. You gotta ask for it. Maybe they'll give it to you. And so yeah, this is a scary duo. I mean, it's gonna be coming in for at least 4.
You will speak when I allow you.
How can Bruam help?
And Azir? Oh boy. I don't think we're dead. Might be dead.
My name will echo through the ages.
It's gonna be 3 summons. They're all dealing 9 apiece. We can't get any more units down. Might just be dead.
Full speed ahead.
Arise!
Don't waste my time.
Stand
Are we dead?
behind Bruam.
Looks like we're dead. Alright. Bring him back. GG. Well done, Scargrounds. literally unplayable. Okay. GG's all around. We can pull this one up, talk about it a little bit more. It's been a pretty savage day for the Scargrounds. I think you can readily admit. And so it's tough. This is it's interesting to me. I was actually thinking about Vladimir in the sense that he got rotated out of standard so he could be reworked, and so he's just kind of hanging out in Eternal to where he's just not very good. And so it's like I'm curious that kind of angle. I think Riot has hinted at there's plans to add new versions of champions to the game. Like they're at no risk of running out of champions in any time. I think they have like 3 or 4 years before they run out of champions, and so they have plenty of time to get that kind of figured out. But as you know, some of the champions are a lot more popular than other ones. They're going to want to get 3 and 4 copies of Ezreal and Garen out there maybe before they get their second copy of Vladimir on the board. And so I'm curious if he'll just get like a complete rework, or they'll just say, Vladimir, lover of drains, you're no good. You're just kind of stuck out there. See ya, friend. Nobody's gonna play you except that like one dude that has 4 million Vladimir mastery. But as it is, nonetheless, I think this deck it does some stuff okay. I like a lot of the combos that we have going on here between the Forges and them using Bellows Breath, and the Bellows Breath tying in with the Scargrounds and Vladimir, so we get the level ups on Vladimir when our units survive, and the activations on the Scargrounds. It's like just a nice cycle of synergies that you can be pulling off. But the kind of classical problem that you run into with decks like this is that it gets really invested in a singular unit, and so as we are playing against like the Trundle deck we kept conceding to, and playing against the Disintegrate decks, if you come out and really invest in your big super unit and your opponent just easily kills it, it's kind of a real bummer, and there's no real ways around this. And so the deck is typically looking for a meta that involves a lot of unit-based, ground-based combat, to where you're playing against something like Scouts, or you're playing against Elites, just these really stat-oriented, combat-heavy style of decks. And then as you come out and play against like really slow control decks, you're just going to get murdered. And as you play against decks like Elusives, you're going to get murdered. And so it's tough finding the kind of middle ground to where this deck isn't just complete garbage, and actually having a little bit of success with it. And so that's tough. The other thing is with the Scargrounds, it just takes like so much to get going. As we were talking in the initial portion of the video about the new Demacia unit, the 3/3 for 3 thing that makes the opposing spells more expensive. Like cards like that come down and have an immediate impact and don't take any ramp up, even if it's in landmark mode, right? And so you put the thing on the board, you don't attack with it, you don't block with it, it just sits there, just acting as a landmark, and it's doing something, right? And with things like the Scargrounds, though, it doesn't even do anything as soon as you play it, right? You have to play the Scargrounds, and you have to have your allies survive combat, then they get tough, and then they can start activating it on your combos. And so if you weren't like quite familiar with what we were hoping to have happen in that last game, that you get the Scargrounds on the board, and then you have your units develop tough, and then as your units have tough, you can put it in front of the Blades and put it in front of the Sand Soldiers, and you just get the free blocks over and over again because they can't deal enough damage to your units. But as the problem persisted there, A, we just didn't have the time to play the Scargrounds, and then B, some of our units were already damaged, and so if you had the 1 health, you couldn't block and get the bonus from the Scargrounds, and so it was just completely ineffective all across the board. And so as decks like this go, I think there's, maybe something with Vladimir, maybe something with Bruam, but at the end of the day, I think this is realistically just the Freylord Forge deck. That's the only reason we would have really had any success. And then you start to say, well, I want to cut out the Scargrounds because it didn't do anything. And then if we're not playing the Scargrounds, maybe we want to move away from playing Vladimir because we've cut away from one of our combos with the Bellows Breath. And then if you're not playing the Scargrounds and you're not playing Vladimir, you're just slowly finding yourselves playing some kind of Ornn-based Forge deck that has nothing to do with where you started. And so, it's tough. I get that a lot of people like this style of deck. It's just not any good in Eternal right now. The power level and the power creep of Eternal kept climbing and climbing and climbing, and the power level of this deck just didn't get any new tools. And even if it did get new tools, I don't know what you would want them to look like. And so I'm not wanting to play Crimson Pigeon in this deck, as it just doesn't really fit the themes of what we're trying to do. But nonetheless, still had a little bit of fun, no, nothing wrong with that. Even if your win rate isn't high, your fun rate should be. And we had fun in some of those games, and so count that as our win for the day. And so that is going to do it for us today. I had fun with that. I hope you did too. This is Bust. Thank you for watching.